Announcements. Immediately following this, Shane and I are going to head up to the printmaking studio for Flat Tail Press. We're going to try kind of experimental print with a couple of Shane's images. And so if you're needing an event, or you're just interested in Shane's work, or want to come do some prints, come on up there. That's going to be from about 1 to 3. So we'll be working up there. Anything else? No? Okay, well, it's a joy for me to have one of my good friends here today. I met Shane 2015, the last time you were on campus. Shane was touring his exhibition, and he came and did wet plate demos over in the library. We had Shane doing that, and so that was the first time I got to meet Shane. A few years later, I started doing the wet plate process, and now Shane is my kind of go-to anytime I'm stumped with chemistry. And you'll get to hear about his story and how he found the process. But Shane has been my mentor kind of in the process since then. So I'm very thankful and glad that he can share his story with us today.
I appreciate it. I'm Shane Balkowitsch. I run Nostalgia Glass Wet Plate Studio in Bismarck, North Dakota. I have a natural light photography studio that I built in my backyard where I'm making these images on a weekly basis. And my goal is to get as many pieces as I can to different archives around the world. I'm not going to go too much into the process today. Ryan's taught the process here and stuff like that, but we want to talk a little bit about the origin of me as an artist, and let you know the story that I didn't even own a camera until I was 44 years of age. So I had no idea that I had any artistic ability whatsoever. Back in 2012, you'll see here there's a photograph, not the most in focus photograph of a motorcycle and some people behind it, that I saw online. So I was online on Facebook, I was scrolling, and I saw this image, and I don't know what it was. There's nothing really about this image that would cause you to stop and change your life. But for some reason, this image on the left changed my life. Paul DeLorean's, you'll see him on the right there. I saw the image of him pouring some chemicals in the back of his van and making these images, and then I messaged out to him and I said, "What in the hell is that?" And he explained to me that it was the wet plate collodion process. I got onto Google, did some research, and here's this archaic process that nobody practices anymore. There's less than 1,000 of us wet plate photographers in the world, and I asked him, well, I would just love to do that. He was a very kind man, and he said to me, well, do you want a camera? I said, no. He says, are you a photographer? I said, no. And he said, well, there's no way a non-photographer will ever teach himself the wet plate collodion process. And within about 45 days of that conversation, I made my first wet plate. This plate here with my brother Chad was plate number 1. So since that time I've made, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong slide. So I made this plate here on October 4, 2012 of my brother Chad. I had never been in a darkroom before. I made my own darkroom. I figured this out just, I read some manuals, I watched some YouTube videos, and I taught myself this process. What I'd like to get across to you guys today is that, at 43 years of age, it's never too late to chase something. So I chased this photographic process, not knowing that I had any artistic ability whatsoever. Some would argue I still don't have any artistic ability. And I think that's the part of the story that I want to kind of relate to you guys today, is that you never know when, and it doesn't have to be photography, it doesn't have to be painting, it doesn't have to be drawing, it can be anything. Just chase it. Give something an opportunity, and you never know where it'll lead you. And sure, there may be a lot of times when you chase something and there's no fruit that is gained from that, but there's something to be said about chasing something wholeheartedly, and I've been doing that for 12 years. So this is my first portrait, And so I just made another portrait of my brother. So this is called My Brother Through the Years. And on October 4th, every year since my first portrait, I take another portrait of my brother in the historic process. It will be, the entire series will be gifted to his daughter upon the conclusion. Other things that I see is like, and this is an offer anytime I talk to students, I talk to students all the time. If you're ever in Bismarck and you want to come into my studio and see the process firsthand, everyone's welcome. So I have an open door policy. You'll never know who's showing up there. So if any of you guys are interested in this, please come see my studio. But when you walk into my studio, it's rather grand, and people think that you need to have all this stuff. I started in the back warehouse of a building, and you'll see a picture there of me in my original studio, which was nothing more than a corner of a warehouse, and we had no lights whatsoever. And things can start anywhere, so you just have to take a chance. One of the things, and why you guys are putting your names into the hat today, is that I'm going to be gifting you guys, two of you, Volume 1 or Volume 2 or Volume 3 of my Native American series, which I'm really known for. It's called Northern Plains Native Americans: A Modern Wet Plate Perspective. And I just had a book signed at the State Historical Society last weekend, and the question everyone asks is, how did you get started taking photographs of Native Americans? And the answer must always be, it started with Ernie LaPointe, the great-grandson of Sitting Bull. So I had in my, while I was learning about some historic photographers, I learned about this gentleman, O.S. Goff, who actually, this is downtown Bismarck, and this is him with his hat and his wife and his daughter and their dog. And he was a frontier photographer. He would go around and take photographs. But what's most fantastic about Goff's work, and nobody knew this, is that he took this photograph. And you'd say, well, Shane, I've seen many photographs of Sitting Bull before, but you haven't seen this one before, because this is the first ever photograph of Sitting Bull taken. And it was taken downtown Bismarck, where Landis got Goff in 1871. And from there, Sitting Bull went on to have many portraits done, but nobody really knows the story of the first ever photograph of Sitting Bull. So I found out about this. I found out through the Smithsonian that there's a gentleman called Ernie LaPointe, who's the great-grandson of Sitting Bull. I picked up the phone. I found him in Leeds, South Dakota, and called him on the phone. It was probably the first ring, the phone rang, and he picked up the phone, and I explained to Ernie that I'm making wet plates in Bismarck. I explained to him about the portrait of his great-grandfather, and he said, well, I know about the portrait of my great-grandfather. He knew about Goff. I wasn't telling him anything he didn't know. And I said, will you come in and have your portrait taken? And he agreed. Within a week, he was in my studio. And I captured the great-grandson of Sitting Bull 135 years after Goff captured in the same city in the same photographic process. So this is ground zero for my series. Ernie tells this funny story. You see the cars traveling behind him. That's at that warehouse there, my old warehouse. And he thought, like, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. There's buses and trucks, and he could hear all the traffic behind him. He didn't realize that the process is so very slow that these cars are moving too fast that none of them would render in the photograph. So there were cars passing behind him during this exposure out in the back of my warehouse. They just don't appear. Here's a photograph of Ernie in my natural light studio. This plate here that I did on the right, that and the one that he's holding went to the South Dakota Historical Society. Another portrait of Ernie. He's come into my studio 5 or 6 times. We talk about once a month on the phone, so there's these long-standing relationships that are make themselves apparent to me as I'm going through this process. Then I had the opportunity to photograph Evander Holyfield, the 4-time heavyweight champion of the world. How many of you guys know who Evander Holyfield is? Okay, great. Virgil Hill was a North Dakota boxer. He came in and said, I can give you a half hour. And Virgil spent 4 hours with me. And upon leaving, he taped my hand and showed me how to tape my hands and everything like that. And before Virgil left, Virgil says, I'm going to get the champ in your studio. And I didn't know what he meant. I said, what do you mean? He goes, I'm going to get Evander Holyfield in the studio, and I just took it as, okay, this gentleman's talking. So then it was about 6 months later, Evander and Virgil Hill were actually in the Olympics. They were roommates in the Olympics during boxing. So about 6 months later, at my daughter's basketball game, and the phone rang, and the person on the phone said, the check will give you an hour if you can pick them up at his hotel in 10 minutes. And I said, I'll be there in 8. And so then Evander came out to the studio. It's got kind of a daunting task. I mean, he's in great shape and everything, but it's a daunting task to ask that 4-time heavyweight champion of the world. I wanted this pugilist. I wanted this big fist. He has fists like lunchboxes, so that's what you see there. And what's significant about this portrait for me, as a young photographer, I'd only been taking portraits for a couple of years. The Smithsonian contacted me about taking this into their permanent archive. So I said, well, that would be a huge honor. I said, I'll box it up and send it to you. He said, no, that's not how this works, Mr. Balkowitsch. We're going to send a climate-controlled van to collect the plate at your warehouse. And that's what they did. So we also made the front cover of E-Camera magazine, which no longer exists. But it was a huge honor to, within just a couple of years of finding the camera, to actually have a plate at the Smithsonian Institute. And this is the setup shot. And it was in my old studio, so I was using continuous bulbs and stuff, no window lights. You know, I'm talking to a bunch of art students here, so I want to talk to you a little bit today about some of my creative work, and you guys will see some of the prints again on the floor here, some of the creative work that I do. So I do Native American work, which is my life's mission, to photograph 1,000 Native Americans. I've done 837 in the last 12 years, 11 years it's taken to take 837 portraits. So after the pandemic, I had learned about this painting from the 1500s, and I'm always looking for inspiration, and I wanted to, we were coming out of the pandemic, and I wanted something grand, so I've been doing these large collaborations with people. You know, we want to have set designers, we want to have people that do makeup, we want to have people that do wardrobe, and then find actors and actresses to be in the piece. So I'm always looking for some kind of something grand, and what we found was this painting. And if you look at this painting, there was a plague during this time. So the skeletons represent the virus, the Black Plague that was killing everyone, 70% of Europe. And so if you look here at the painting, every skeleton represents the virus. And what story and what you learn from this painting is that the virus doesn't care if you're the king, the virus doesn't care if you're poor, the virus doesn't care if you're a soldier with a sword. It's going to, if you're hiding under a table, it doesn't matter who you are. And coming out of the pandemic, the coronavirus pandemic, it just seemed a poignant topic. So, and then Merrick Joyce, the film director from the University of Mary, he came up with the name No Vaccine for Death, essentially saying that we're all dying every day, and there's no way to stop it. So Monsignor Shea from the university gave me access to the grotto out back of the university. He said, I have one caveat, Mr. Balkowitsch, the only thing you can't, the Virgin Mary statue is down in the grotto. I do not want the Virgin Mary statue to be amongst your art, so I made that promise to him. And so here's the setup. Here's actually the exposure. And what's beautiful about the wet plate process is that this is a digital capture of it, and it looks all kind of hoiky and not believable and all of that. But then when you put it through the lens and you put it through the process and use chemistry to make the image, you can make something rather grand. So this is the final image of that we came up with. This is my daughter here. My daughter here is at the grave of her father. That's my son up there with the sword slaying that woman. My wife's over there, Mrs. Death, having coffee while everyone's demise from the virus is occurring. So it was, it's probably one of the largest collaborations ever in the wet plate process. There was like 90 of us, and it took us 18 months of planning. I'm always looking for inspiration in other places. My favorite photographer of all time, William Mortensen, did the image on the right, and I came up with the Persecution of Complete Strangers back in 2016 on the left. The Capsizing of Humanity in 2017. This has been done quite, and I just found another digital photographer recently that did their take on this. So that 1800s painting, and then even Witkin below that did his take on this during the Ronald Reagan era, and then on the left, the capsizing of humanity, inspired by the raft of Medusa. This is my son Grayson up here. This is my brother Chad. And we made a raft in the middle of a prairie with no water, and came up with that image. Liberty Trudges Through Injustice. In 2018, Liberty Leading the People is at the Louvre. And when I went to the Louvre about 4 years ago, I went there, and lo and behold, if you go to the Louvre and you see both of these paintings, the Raft of Medusa and Liberty Leading the People, they're both on the wall beside each other. They're huge. They're like 4 feet across. And you know, I just happened to just pick these 2 pieces out, and here they are. So I'm standing in front of these 2 pieces that I've spent months and months and months creating or reproducing in the wet plate process. I was accused online of the Capitol building. So this is the capital of France, but I thought we should have our Capitol building in ours. I shot this just 50 yards up the hill from my studio. I had the fire department was there. You'll see the smoke in the background and over some of the people in the back. I had a fireman there in full suit, lighting up military-grade smoke bombs in order to get that small effect that you see. It seemed like a big effort for a little effect, but you can see some of the haziness there. But I was accused of photoshopping the state capitol building into my wet plate, you know, and all it was Paul Newt, the art teacher from Bismarck High School, painted a cardboard piece of the capitol that was cut out, and then there's a little, like, 8-year-old girl standing behind that piece, holding that up beside the people. Maiden pouring milk, again, trying to be inspired by other painters, other photographers. This Vermeer is very, very famous. I'm sure everyone's aware of it. And then I found out that Mr. Bortenson, my favorite photographer, took his crack at Maiden pouring milk in 1938, which he won. He was the winner of the RPS Hood Medal, which is a huge, huge honor in 1949. So I thought, well, if Vermeer did it and Mortensen did it, I should maybe have a crack at it. So I had Lainey poke my prop master out, and she put this scene together. You'll see the technical issue was the pouring of milk. Like, milk pours too fast, and I've tried this before with pouring water, so I knew that wasn't going to work. So Lainey made plaster of Paris milk, and she actually made that milk jug she's holding as well. And we did that. We went to a local butcher. Trying to find a chicken with feet on it is not something that's easy nowadays. But we were able to find a chicken carcass with meat on it, and then Lainey took the chicken home and cooked it and fed it to her dogs after this. For all of you animal lovers out there. So this is the setup in my natural light studio. Northern facing windows. This is Lainey here, and she's made all my props. And this is Eve, a Lancaster, my muse, and a good friend of mine. And you'll see up in the right-hand corner the natural light where we're actually letting the light in. There's no flash, there's no continuous bulbs used at all. And we made our version of Maiden pouring milk. And here's the final image. And the Royal Photographic Society, I'm not sure if you guys know that, but the Royal Photographic Society in the United Kingdom is the oldest photographic society in the world. I want to say it's 1838 is whenever they first started taking photos of that. And they took this plate into their permanent collection. And so here's the 3 of them. How many of you guys know about wet plate? Anyone seen wet plate? So there is some of you who haven't, so we're going to try this. I don't know if there's audio with this, but I'm going to play this. This is just a slide. So this is the fixer step of the process. So if you've never seen the wet plate process, what happens is that the image looks like a negative, and then the fixer reverses the image and makes it permanent. And I just wanted to play this quick video so you guys can kind of see, and I'm not sure if we're going to hear any audio. I hear it here, but I don't know if you guys can hear it. And the plate slowly. She spent 4 hours on her back for this composition. Is how much time we'll see the reaction here in a couple minutes from the ladies. After 4 hours, this is what you get. So what's left is a pure silver on glass image that will last 1,000 years. I don't know if you guys know this about the wet plate process, but the images that Ryan and I make are made out of pure silver, and silver doesn't degrade, so when the students come out, I tell them if you put a silver spoon on the ground and you come back 500 years from now, what's on the ground? And the answer must be a silver spoon. So these images that I've placed in these museums and archives and that we're making will outlast any other photograph man has ever created. We're also writing in molecules of silver. If I was able to pipette 1 molecule of silver at a time on the tip of my finger, which would be impossible, but if I could, how many molecules of silver at the tip of my finger until the human eye can visualize it? Any guesses? 1 molecule, 2 molecules, 3 molecules. You're saying, I still can't see it. 4 molecules. What number do I get to? And then you say, oh, I can see it. What's the number?
1,000.
Oh, it's a good question. Good guess. Anything else?
1,500 right here, 1,500.
1,500. Anything? 2 billion. 2 billion molecules of silver. I get to 2 billion and you say, ah, Shane, I can see the silver for the first time. So Ryan and I are writing in these molecules of silver. So you can take an original ambrotype that he makes or I make, you can put it, go to your guys' science department here, find your most high-powered microscope, and you can't get to the pixel or grain that makes up the image. You need an electron microscope at 10,000 power in order to see the clumping of silver. And I've read the research article that the university did showing this effect. So these are the most high-resolution photographs man has ever created. And in about 1885, we decided to abandon this for something more convenient and something more simple. It was not a good enough reason to abandon this process, and I am trying to be proof that that's the case. Here's some of my, these are long exposures, so when you guys are all used to your iPhones, we all have one of these damn things in our hands. You're taking pictures with this, 1/60th of a second, the aperture is open, 1/60th of a second. I'm experiencing 10 seconds of exposure in my natural light studio, so it's 600 times longer to make a wet plate than it does a modern digital photograph. So what's beautiful about that, a lot of photographers think that's a hindrance. I don't think it's a hindrance, but you're able to do some of these, if you have movement up in the upper right-hand corner where she just essentially stood like this, and then after so long she just went like this, and you get movement. You can do different effects. Fairy in a jar. Anyone have any idea how I shot a fairy in a jar? This is all in camera, you guys. This is nothing's Photoshop. I have this little plate to prove this. So what you do is you shoot the fairy standing there with a black backdrop. I go on the back of my ground glass of the camera and I outline her form. And then I do my exposure. I take the plate out and I move my camera over to a table that has a jar on it. And then I focus on the jar. And then I know where her form is on the back of my ground glass. And I place her in the jar, and then I take the lens cap off again and do a double exposure. Talk a little bit about this. As of this week, I have plates in 92 museums and archives around the world. It's my life mission to preserve as many plates as possible, not for me, but for my subjects. Why is this important to me? I'm not sure. I put that question there and I don't really have the answer to it. Maybe it's the oncology nurse in me that it's a reason that I want to leave things behind. I'm not quite sure yet. One of the things that it's occurred to me, and it's taken me 55 years to realize this, and I would want to I want to share this little thought with all of you guys. The present is all we have. All we have is the present. Yesterday is but a low-resolution memory. Tomorrow cannot be predicted or expected. This present moment is where we live our lives 1 second at a time. What better way to immortalize our lives than with photography? It is the only proof or record we have of what happened in the past. The written and spoken words are fraught with mistakes, biases, misunderstandings, and imperfections. A perfect photographic record gives us the best chance at understanding what happened in the past. In the end, it's all we have. I happen to think it's important to capture these moments as they occur. I want to prove that I existed with the works that I create. None of you, I mean, what did you have for lunch last Tuesday? What are you going to have for lunch next Tuesday? So we're stuck here in this present moment. Okay, all I have is this moment with you guys. This is where I'm living my life. It took me a long time. I don't mean to get, this isn't a philosophy class, but it kind of ties into why I'm trying to prove that I was here. So all we have is this moment right here. I don't have 10 seconds from now. I don't know that I'm going to make it home to my family tonight. I do not have 2 weeks ago. I don't have 10 years ago. I don't even have yesterday, if you think about it. So all we have is today. So try to live your life as if every moment is precious. This is what I'm trying to, yeah, I just wish someone would have told me this very simple concept when I was growing up. I can't, Ryan's, he's got to know, I can't have a photographic talk in front of young people or students without talking about AI imagery. Photography must contain photosensitive material or substrate. So this is not a photograph, okay? I know you'll see them on Instagram. I see, people will label them as such. These are not photographs. Photography is made by using a camera. Even a pinhole camera qualifies. That goes back to that whole concept that people think, oh, I've got to have a $10,000 digital camera, or I've got to have this, I've got to have that. None of that matters. I have seen pinhole photographs taken from a beer can with no lens whatsoever that will bring you weeping to your knees. So this whole idea that you have to have this expensive device or something to make imagery, it's nonsense. No light is used in the making of artificial intelligence imagery. I had someone argue about 3 months ago. They said, well, these digital images are transferred over fiber optics, and fiber optics uses light. And they were trying to justify that as an argument. Reality is important. Capture a moment is important. Photography for 186 years has been a reliable source of capturing history and reality. Not always perfect, but the best that we've ever had. And the truth is grounded in reality, and we need we need some reality. I'm going to go through just quickly some of my work over the past year. So this is some of my work, some of my Native American work. 2019, the third one over from the top is my wife Bonnie. She suffers from a curvature of her back. Greta Thunberg, the Swedish environmentalist, probably the most viewed modern-day webplate of all times with 3 million views and shares. She shared it. Deb Haaland, Secretary of the Interior, I talked to her yesterday after the election. Just some of my work as my creative work. During the pandemic, I lost all my sitters, so I'm booked out for my Friday sessions about 7 months. So I'm in the middle of a pandemic. I can't have people to my studio, so my poor family had to step in and be my subject. So this is my daughter, Olivia, and it's called Girl with Virus. So I had a friend in Canada that had an exercise ball, and I saw it online, and I said, wow, that looks like a virus, the coronavirus. And I could have went and got my own exercise ball, but I said, can you send that to me? It's like a $2 ball. He said, sure, he sends it to me. My daughter painted all the white spots, and we made Girl with Virus during the pandemic. Lainey Pope, my prop master up at the top again, who's just, she's fantastic. Another double exposure where I was able to go back into the darkroom and flip the plate. This is called Love and War, and I was able to meld these two people together. Some more of my creative work. My favorite portrait of my wife. If you go back into the Louvre, you'll say, well, why is your favorite portrait of your wife? She doesn't have a head. If you go into the Louvre, the Victory statue is at the top of the staircase, and my wife fell in love with it. So I asked Lainey if she could make a prop, and she made the statue prop. And then we could have just put it on a dress for him, but what was really important for me is that my wife Bonnie is actually standing in this dress, and I put a black scarf over her head and made her head disappear and made her arms disappear, and we were able to make a piece of art for Lainey's prop. If you guys want to know a little bit more about my work, there's a 1-hour documentary that won some awards on Amazon called Balkowitsch. It kind of goes a little bit deeper into my Native American work as well. And then these are 2 books that I'm going to be gifting to you guys today. We'll draw names from the hat. So, do we have any questions? Yes, please.
Before you started doing photography, did you have a background with chemistry at all, or is that something that you developed?
Well, that's interesting. As an oncology nurse, I had to handle chemotherapy, so I was trained with handling very, very dangerous reagents and injecting very, very dangerous reagents into people's bodies. So that's about as far as it went. But I was not unfamiliar with putting gloves on and making sure I have a gas mask on and protecting myself from these images. So that's a very good question. Thanks for asking that. But yeah, so as an oncology nurse, I did have a lot of experience with chemicals. Anyone else? We have these prints here that I want to make sure that you guys all get. I suppose, Brian, we can grab the hat and we can draw a couple names and we can give these books away.
I have a question, Shane. How do you work every Friday? That's your big kind of your
Friday day, yeah.
How do you keep yourself new ideas coming? How do you, in terms of like?
I'm inspired by art, so I read, I look at different art. I mean, you gave me a wonderful tour here today of some of your art as well, and I just find different things that inspire me. And the thing about portraiture for me is that when someone comes in, they are unique in and of themselves. So, the inspiration comes from these individuals. So when someone schedules, I do commission portraits as well, so they may schedule a commission portrait and come into the studio. I'm kind of online looking at their profiles and stuff and seeing what kind of person this is and trying to, days before they come in, I try to get a feel for who this person is and what I want to do. But usually I don't know what it is until the person's sitting there right in front of me. But it's always it's a good question, but it's always a collaboration, Ryan. It's always a collaboration between me and my sitters, what they want to do, any ideas that they have, and we just kind of slowly figure it out from there. But I'm always continuously Lane's right now making this prop, like space helmet for my next shoot, and we're going to do that on the 22nd. And I have photographers come in from all over the world to my studio, and it's quite an honor to be in this position at this time in my life, to be able to have found this.
Yes. Are there any projects that you're, I don't know, you want to do, but you're kind of nervous about, or you don't know if it'll work out, or you're planning for, hoping for?
Well, as far as big projects, I have to finish this. Now, I promised my Native American friends, Kelvin Grinnell from the MHA, Man in Hidatsa Ricker Nation, came into my studio. He gave me the name Ishte Ekagoche in Hidatsa, which means shadow catcher. And I was always dedicated to this Native American series. But when that happened, we did exchanging of gifts. I had to have witnesses. We had traditional food. And about an hour of prayer in his native culture. I really became dedicated to this. So I'll answer your question. I have to finish this. I'm 837 portraits. I have to get to 1,000. People ask me, are you going to stop taking portraits of Native Americans after 1,000? The answer is absolutely not. But I'll feel like I met that goal of this promise that I made. It's going to take me, honestly, 15 years to do this. So, and every one of the plates is at the State Historical Society. But one of the projects I do want to work on is I want to do a book of my own art instead of the pieces here on the floor. And I'm going to collaborate with Chad Nodelin. I have a digital photography, official digital photographer in my who has captured all these, Liberty Trudges Through Justice, all the big collaboration. He's always there with his camera, capturing the making of. So we're going to have this art book that's going to show my art, and then it's going to show the behind-the-scenes photographs of that. So really looking forward to, but I can't spend any time on that until I get through these 4 volumes. So, and volume 3 just came out. Yes?
Just wondering, how many photographs do you think that you actually, or plates that you actually make like a year, or like within a month?
I made 5,214 plates. Every one of them has been numbered and dated in the back. You can turn every one of them. A plate has never gotten out of mine. I know exactly. You walk in the street, there's a piece of paper that tells me the next plate number, and that's all written on the back of the plate. You know, Ryan can attest to this too, is we find these historic, you're creating these images that will be here for 1,000 years, and you know, you find these images from the Victorian era, 160, 170 years old, and you open them up and they're in these little brass cases, you open them up and turn them over, and you're just praying that you see a name. You just want to know the name of the person that's in the photo. There's nothing there. You don't know who the photographer was. You don't even know what continent was. Heavens forbid, you don't know what date it was taken. You don't know any of these things. So all of my plates have been labeled. And you know, as art students, I think that if I can preach a little bit more to you, is always put your name, always put your marking, always put the date on the back or somewhere, so that you know you're doing. If this ends up in someone's hands and they care about your work after you, it just makes everyone's life much easier. Because I'd always just like, no, it was Sarah in this picture, and you know, Sarah was a butcher, or whatever the story is. We just don't know any of that stuff, and I make sure of that. So it's taken me. When I made my 5,000th plate, I went outside my studio and took a portrait of my studio, and I shared it online, and this math teacher came back to me and said, well, Shane, how thick are your wet plates? I said, well, they're 5 millimeter thick, or they're glass. I'm making these on black glass, okay, like stained glass. That's something you find at a church, and they're 5 millimeters, so he came back like just seconds later, and he says, well, Shane, if you stack those portraits over this last 12 years that you've been making, 5,000 of them, it would go 74 feet in the air. And until that was brought to my attention, my head's down. I'm just so focused on creating the work. You know, you have to stop sometimes and kind of reflect and see what it is, what I've been doing. But on average, I make about 300. So 300 portraits a year. That's working every week, all the time, and I only make 300 portraits. If you had a wedding today and you had to hire a photographer, they're going to take 3,000 portraits in one afternoon. Yes?
So when you do like a shoot like that, how many plates do you usually take per shoot? Is that 300 individual portraits, or do you take like 10?
Well, that's 300 over the whole year. So if I, like, for instance, I can tell you, Liberty Trudges Through Injustice, we made 7 portraits, 7 plates. We did 7 attempts at it. No Vaccine for Death, 3 plates. So it was the strangest thing that day, right? It's like 18 months, 90 people. It was mayhem. It was absolutely. I was standing there on the back of the truck thinking, this is not going to work. This is just, I'm not going to be able to pull this off. And we made these 3 plates, and it was like, and as soon as I saw it, I said, okay, that's a wrap. And everyone's just standing around like, they couldn't believe it, you know what I mean? Like, but I didn't want to push it any further. And it's like, I've learned that once you get what you should be grateful for what you get. If you make a piece of art and if you're happy with it, you should be grateful for it. And I figured out, and it's the editing thing, I've just figured out, it's not doing me any good to make more work. I'm just going to make it, if it takes me 18 months and I take 1 portrait and I get it right away, it's done and I move on. And Lainey will spend months on these props, we'll get it like plate 1 or 2, and it's like, okay Lainey, what's next? Because we have a plate that represents what we wanted to do. Yes?
So I assume in the process, so the final plate is the one that you keep in your archive, but
I give the other plates, yes.
You're kind of like test.
Yeah, and I write tests on the back of them, and I'll put 1 of 3, 2 of 3, and 3 of 3, and then I give them to like people that help me. So my director, Merrick, got one, and you know, Sabrina Hornog, who was Lady Liberty, who was standing there with that flag, and you know, the guns in that shot, that one gun was like an $8,000 gun borrowed from the State Historical Society of Dakota, just for that shot. So there's a lot that goes into this, and then so I'm gifting plates all the time. And then I do make, other plates for my Native American series. The best one will always, if you were Native American, I took a portrait, I took 2 portraits. The best one always goes to the State Archive, up on what they call Shane's Shelf. And then the other I keep, and I find other archives for them. So that's a great question. No one's ever asked that of me before, but they're all marked. And then I only put the title of the piece on the final product. So there may be like remnants of the work somewhere else in the world, but there's only one of the original pieces, and only one plate to qualify for whatever I was trying to attempt. Some great questions. You had a question?
I was going to ask the exact same one.
Great minds.
What would you like to improve at as you go on your journey? What are you trying to get better at?
I know that I just want to, this is the only process I care about. Like, I've done contact prints, I've done cyanotypes and other things. This is the only, and I'm telling the truth here, if I could make wet prints tomorrow for some reason, I would stop making photographs. It's that important to me. I'm this one trick pony. This is all that I have, you guys. And again, it's feeling grateful that I found this one little thing that I'm good at, so I'm just gonna like covet it, and I'm just gonna work on this. When I first started, and you know this, you've seen my early work, you know, you just don't know what you're doing, and you're trying to find your way, and you're trying to, I learned all of this by trial and error. I should have brought up some of my, I should have posted some of my original works. If you saw some of my original works, you would understand what I'm talking about. But there was incremental improvements, because you're figuring things out. But then you get to a point where, okay, how am I going to make that next improvement? And so there's all kinds of different techniques in lighting. You can mess with the chemistry a little bit, and so we're always just trying to improve. But it's a good question. But it was a bunch of big jumps at first, and then it becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. And I've said this before: the more work that I make, the less I like my work. And people look at me weird sometimes when I say that, but it's true. The more plates that I make, the less I like my work. And I just think it's that editorial eye that I strive. And I never want to make the perfect plate. I never want to make the perfect plate, but there'd be no reason for me to open up the door of my studio and go for it. So I'm always doing that. Yeah.
So your DNA as a kid, were you just attracted to visual things, painting, art, photography, or are you more interested in history, or like where are you coming from?
It's a great question. It's a great question. I think you'll see here some of the some mythological stuff comes out of my work. I was a Dungeons and Dragons kid, so I lived Dungeons and Dragons when I was from 9 to like 18, and I picked it up again in my 20s, and so imagination was always important. I didn't realize until I found a camera that it was always visual. Like as a kid, I'd walk into a room and I'm like, that's wrong. Like, why did that bother anyone else that's walking into this room? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, there's that gap between those two paintings or whatever is too great, or, this isn't even. I've always, you can see on, you get those on Facebook, they'll do this little thing, find this, find the number 9 in a sea of 6s. I can immediately pick that up immediately. It's the crazy, it's like, I have this superpower that doesn't do anything. But I can visually, I've always been visual. I didn't know it. I was a businessman, I was an oncology nurse. I didn't know it. And then I found this camera, and I was searching at the time, because I was killing myself in my corporate life. I was killing myself. And then I found this little process, this little oasis of where I could, and it started really slow. It's like, because I own my own business, and I started in 1998 with my mom in my mom's basement, $50. And so in the back warehouse, I would say, I'll spend an hour this afternoon working on my website. And then the hour became 3 hours, and then it's like, I'm only doing on Fridays. I'd have my employees would be shipping boxes with red lights on there. I had the largest dark room in the world, like 3,000 square feet. And the FedEx guy couldn't come in the door because he came in the door, he would ruin my image and that light in. So it was a crazy thing. But then I slowly got to the point where then I was taking Fridays off, built my studio, and then it was like, I'm retiring. Like, I'm going to sell my company, and I'm going to do this because this is important. Like, this is what I'm meant to do. I'm not meant to move boxes around the world. And that's what I was doing in my business life. Interesting. Good question. Thank you for letting me explain something. Anything else?
Have you been able to go back and tell the guy that told you, you're not a photographer, you won't be able to do it? And be
Here's the thing, when I tell that story, it kind of makes him sound like he's was mean-spirited. He's the nicest, kindest guy you ever want to meet. So Paul DeLawrence, I just talked to him like 3 weeks ago. He's the nicest guy. And he came back, so then he knows he told me that, and he's read in enough of my Genesis stories, right, and interviews and stuff, that's the case. And so Paul DeLawrence runs the largest online motorcycle blog in the world. He hired, just like 4 years ago, he hired a professional writer to sit down with me and to interview me, and they did like a 5-piece spread just on this whole story. He kind of talks about how this guy just messaged me out of nowhere and asked this, and then all of a sudden, this is where he finds himself. So Paul did this fantastic, and this professional writer, I mean, it was amazing. This professional writer documented this story, and we have this connection, Paul and I, and he's just nauseated because every time I talk to him, I thank him for that image of a motorcycle. That, you know, he'll admit, it wasn't that great, Shane. You know what I mean? Like, I always kind of joke that it was some beautiful image that I just couldn't get away. There was nothing about that image that would stop you in your tracks and change your life. And that happened for me. And I could have, and I think about this all the time. So I'm at my job, doing my business, and I'm just scrolling. And I could have been, the phone could have rang, I could have reached for it. Receptionist could have asked for me, I could have got up from the desk, could have went to the bathroom, got a cup of coffee. Whatever, I would have missed that one photograph. There's no possible chance that I could have ever been introduced to this process unless I saw that one stupid picture. And how could I have missed it on that day? Or I just would have logged in 3 seconds later. What's the chances that that one stupid photograph of an out-of-focus motorcycle became so important to me? How are we doing? We're running out of time? Okay, sorry. No, let's let the lady pick. So we're going to pick 2 out. Everyone, nobody's going to go without something. So these are all limited edition signed prints. So just come up and grab whatever you want. And then once they're gone, they're gone. And then I'm going to pick out 2 books. So volume 2 will go first.
All right, first up, Dallas. Woo!
These books are also limited edition and signed, so they're all in there. Volume 3.
Kelly Hobbs.
It's an honor having you guys, you guys having me out. And if you're ever in Bismarck and want to see my studio, just find me on Facebook. Just message me and you'll be more than welcome to come in and see what it is I do. Thank you so much.